The chamber of the Galactic Senate glowed with polished crystal and cold authority. Tiered seats curved around the central dais like a theater built for judgment. Every delegate watched as Captain Elias Mercer set a battered steel helmet on the pristine surface before them. Its surface was pitted with rust and blackened scars. A jagged hole split the crown where shrapnel had chewed through. Mercer let the silence linger. He wanted them to look at it, wanted them to feel the weight of its history. This, he began, his voice steady but carrying across the chamber, belonged to a soldier who fought on Earth more than 6 centuries ago. He was ordered to hold a trench no wider than this platform against artillery, gas, and fire. He didn't retreat. He didn't surrender. He died standing. And he won. A ripple of unease crossed the chamber, quickly replaced by polite disdain. Grand Strategist Vareth Kyle leaned forward, mandibles clicking in contempt. His pale, jointed fingers drummed against the table. Charming! A primitive trinket from a mud war. Do you expect us to learn strategy from savages who fought over dirt? Mercer's gaze met his without flinching. I expect you to learn that Earth's soldiers don't break. We adapt. We endure. You're about to face the Crag Dominion, an enemy that doesn't fight by your rules. When your formations collapse, it won't be doctrine that saves you. It'll be soldiers who refuse to die quietly. A rustle of voices rose among the delegates. Some sneered openly. Others whispered as if he'd spoken blasphemy. Vareth's tone dripped with superiority. The Crag are brute force creatures, yes, but the Empire's fleets are unmatched. Your humans will serve well enough as shock fodder. A flare in the dark, nothing more. Flares burn out, Mercer shot back. We don't. We fight until there's nothing left but blood and ruin, and we still keep moving. I've seen it. I've lived it. The strategist's mandibles spread in something close to amusement. So dramatic. Tell me, Captain, do you believe your handful of feral recruits can teach the Empire what war means? Mercer leaned forward. Not teach. Show. Hours later, in the training fields orbiting Orvani's Prime, Mercer stood among his soldiers. The alien instructors had already ridden them off, shaking their heads at the strange drills the humans demanded. The air was thin and frigid, the terrain jagged with volcanic rock. Alien recruits stumbled, clutching at rebreathers, and used to hardship outside regulated domes. Mercer's soldiers adapted quickly, turning their gear inside out, wrapping cloth around faces, cracking grim jokes as they dug shallow foxholes in stone. Not much cover, Captain, Corporal Hayes muttered, sweat freezing on his brow. Mercer crouched, examining the terrain. Then we make cover. Stack rock, build lines. Crag won't give us safe ground, so we make the ground ours. By nightfall, the human camp looked nothing like the alien barracks. Fires burned in stone pits. Rifles lay ready at arm's reach. Soldiers slept in shifts. Even in training, they prepared for ambush. The alien overseers shook their heads, murmuring about wasteful paranoia. But when a simulated Crag raid hit the camp at dawn, only the humans held. The aliens broke instantly, scattering across the rocks, shields flaring and collapsing. Mercer's troops rose from their improvised trenches, weapons blazing, cutting through the attackers with ruthless coordination. When the dust cleared, the alien instructor recorded his notes with stiff disapproval. Human methods, while effective, are undisciplined, inefficient, and psychologically unstable. Mercer didn't bother reading the report. He knew what mattered. His soldiers lived. Back in the Senate halls, Varys stood with other strategists reviewing holographic projections of the Crag front. They will strike within the next cycle, he said confidently. Our fleets will engage. Our soldiers will form the line. Humans will absorb the brunt of the initial assault, sparing our elite divisions. Mercer stood at the edge of the council chamber, fists clenched. You're making the same mistake every empire in history has made, treating men like expendable numbers. We don't fight for your empire. We fight to survive. Put us on the line, and we'll hold it. But don't think we'll do it by your playbook. Vareth turned, his mandibles twitching. Survive, you say? Very well, Captain. Survive the impossible. That is the task we give your kind. Prove yourself useful, or vanish from relevance. Mercer's jaw tightened, but he didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he stepped closer to his soldiers waiting outside. Orders? Hayes asked quietly. Mercer looked at each of them, scarred veterans, hardened faces. Men and women pulled from Earth not for loyalty to the Empire, but because they had nowhere else to go. They think we're fodder, Mercer said. His voice was low, deliberate, carrying across the small circle. Fine. Let's show them what fodder does when it bites back. The soldiers smiled grimly. That night, Mercer sat alone in his quarters aboard the orbital station, staring at the old helmet resting on his desk. The Senate had dismissed it as primitive scrap, but to him it was a reminder. The past was carved in blood, and Earth had survived because no one else could stomach the price. He closed his eyes and pictured what was coming, the crags swarming across the stars, the Empire's rigid lines folding under chaos. He could already see the moment when doctrine failed. And when it did, the galaxy would finally learn the truth. Humanity's greatest weapon was not its ships, nor its guns, but the stubborn, unyielding will to endure. Mercer opened his eyes, cold resolve settling in. Tomorrow, the war would begin. And when it did, he would not let Earth be forgotten as cannon fodder. He whispered to the empty room, almost a vow. You wanted soldiers. You'll get survivors. The crag came without warning. At dawn, the void outside the frontier world of Nithros lit with the flare of hundreds of warships dropping from hyperspace. Their hulls were jagged, armored like predators' hides, engines shrieking as they forced through the atmosphere. The Empire's fleets scrambled, formations sliding into perfect lines, banners flashing across tactical screens. Captain Elias Mercer stood with his company on the shattered ground below, the sky burning orange as fire rained. Orders streamed down from command. Hold the valley mouth. Do not retreat. Hayes spat into the dust. We're the shield again. Mercer didn't look at him. Then we make the shield sharp. The valley was wide, with cliffs on both sides. Alien strategists had chosen it because it offered clear fields of fire. To Mercer, it looked like a killing box, for whoever tried to defend it. Dig in, he ordered. While the Empire's units aligned in rigid squares, erecting shimmering shield walls, the humans scattered. They dragged wreckage into barricades, buried mines, camouflaged pits, and set tripwires across the rocks. Some smeared mud across their helmets, blending into the ground. To alien eyes it looked chaotic. To Mercer, it was survival. The crag descended like an avalanche. Hulking figures, 2.5 meters tall, armored in chitin and steel, surged forward in endless ranks. Plasma fire scorched the air. The Empire's wall formations fired in perfect unison, beautiful, disciplined, and useless. The crag smashed through with sheer momentum. Within minutes, the alien lines cracked. Panic spread like wildfire. Mercer's voice cut through the chaos. Hold steady. Wait for it. His soldiers crouched in their makeshift positions, hidden, rifles steady. As the first crag wave charged past the broken shield line, Mercer raised his hand. Now! The valley erupted. Mines tore through enemy ranks, collapsing the front. Hidden gunners opened fire from the cliffs, targeting weak joints in crag armor. Tripwires detonated explosives that sent rocks cascading down. The ambush folded the massive enemy column into confusion. Hit their flanks! Mercer barked. Hayes and a fire team surged from cover, launching grenades into clustered squads. Smoke swallowed the valley. Human voices carried above the roar, short, sharp commands, curses, and laughter cutting through the madness. The crag roared in frustration, their brute strength blunted by traps and relentless small unit strikes. Where Empire soldiers had folded, the humans wove chaos into advantage. But victory came at a price. Corporal Imani fell beside Mercer, her chest burned open by plasma. She gasped once, eyes wide, then went still. Mercer didn't pause, he couldn't. He pressed forward, rallying his squad through smoke and blood. Hours bled into each other. The crag attacked in wave after wave. Each time the Empire tried to reform its broken walls, each time the lines shattered. It was Mercer's soldiers who filled the gaps, darting in and out, laying traps, striking with knives when rifles ran dry. By nightfall, the valley floor was a graveyard. Wrecked armor, alien corpses, and human dead lay mingled in mud. The crag had pulled back at last, regrouping for another push. Mercer's men gathered what little remained of their rations. 30 had gone into the fight. 19 walked out. Hayes sat on a broken slab, hands shaking as he lit a cigarette. They threw us into the meat grinder, Captain. And we held. Barely. Mercer lowered himself beside him. His face was streaked with ash and blood, uniform torn, but his voice was steady. We were never supposed to hold. We were supposed to die buying time. That's the plan they made for us. Hayes exhaled smoke, bitter laughter rasping. Guess we didn't stick to the plan. Later, when the battle reports streamed back to Orvani's prime, the council chambers erupted in confusion. Impossible, one delegate hissed, mandibles quivering. Human units held the valley for 12 hours with no fleet support? Empire divisions collapsed in less than 3. Veritha's voice was sharp as a blade. They survived by chance. Desperation breeds recklessness. This is not sustainable. Another strategist objected. But the data shows that casualties were lower than ours, despite fewer numbers. Their methods are unconventional. Undisciplined, Verith corrected coldly. Chaos cannot be doctrine. They burn bright, yes, but they will burn out. Mercer was not present to defend himself. He was still on Nithros, kneeling in the mud as he closed Imani's eyes, then moved down the line to the next fallen soldier. That night, the surviving humans sat around a dim fire. The alien commanders had already retreated to their fortified bunkers, licking wounds, rewriting reports. Only the humans remained in the valley, battered and bruised, cleaning weapons and patching armor with wire and tape. A young private broke the silence. Sir, we actually beat them back. Us. Not the fleets. Not the strategists. Just us. Mercer looked at the soldier, then at the faces around the fire, filthy, exhausted, yet alive. He nodded once. That's what they'll never understand. They think war is order. Rows of soldiers, perfect formations. But war is survival. It's ugly, it's cruel, and it doesn't follow rules. That's why we're still here. Hayes raised his tin cup in mock salute. To survival, then? A chorus of tired voices answered, rough and quiet, but firm. At dawn, reinforcements finally arrived, Empire troops, pristine armor gleaming, faces hidden behind mirrored visors. They marched through the carnage with expressions of disgust, stepping over corpses of both crag and men without looking down. One officer paused, scanning the wreckage. He turned to Mercer, his voice uncertain. Your unit, you held this valley? Alone? Mercer said nothing. He only gestured at the dead. The officer hesitated. For the first time, an alien soldier bowed his head toward a human. When the report reached Verith again, the strategist dismissed it with a wave. They endure because they must. Nothing more. Fodder with teeth is still fodder. But alone in his chamber, he lingered on the casualty numbers. Something about them gnawed at him. The humans had not fought like fodder. They had fought like survivors who refused extinction. He pushed the thought aside. Pride would not allow the possibility. Yet across the front, whispers began to spread. Alien soldiers who had seen the humans fight passed word in mess halls and trenches. Stories of ragged warriors holding the impossible line. And in the mud of Nithros, Captain Elias Mercer prepared his company for the next assault. He knew the crag weren't finished. Neither was he. He whispered to himself, words no one else heard. They'll learn. One way or another they'll learn. The sky above Nithros burned red as the crag gathered for their final assault. Their war drums carried across the valley, deep vibrations that rattled armor and shook bones. From the cliffs, smoke columns rose where the Empire's defenses had already collapsed. The Council's perfect formations had shattered, and the enemy was closing fast. Captain Elias Mercer stood in the mud with 19 survivors of his company. They were bruised, bloodied, and low on ammunition. Behind them stretched what remained of the Empire's line, fractured units, panicked commanders shouting contradictory orders, soldiers abandoning positions. Hayes glanced at Mercer. If they push through this time, it's over. Nothing left between the crag and the cities. Mercer's jaw tightened. Then we don't let them through. An alien officer nearby barked. Hold your sector until reinforcements arrive. The officer's voice trembled. Everyone knew there were no reinforcements coming. Mercer walked straight to the officer, grabbing him by the arm. Your men will die standing in formation. Break them into squads, scatter, fight dirty. The officer bristled. That's not doctrine. Doctrine won't save you. Chaos will. Mercer shoved him back toward his troops. If you want to live, follow us. The crag advanced, a tidal wave of armor and claws, their war cries shaking the earth. Mercer gave the order. Split. Small teams. Make them bleed. The humans vanished into ruins and rock, setting ambushes and kill zones. Smoke grenades hissed, turning the valley into a choking fog. Empire soldiers hesitated, then, desperate, began copying the humans, breaking formation, taking cover, firing from shadows. The crag charged blind into the mist. Explosions ripped their flanks. Snipers fired from hidden perches. Tripwires triggered avalanches of stone. What had been a clean battlefield became a nightmare labyrinth. Hayes crawled through a trench, knife in hand. A crag warrior leapt down, massive and armored. Hayes slammed the blade into a joint, rolled aside, and fired point-blank into its throat. He shouted into comms. One down. Send them more! Mercer moved between teams, directing strikes, keeping momentum alive. His voice carried calm authority over chaos. Cut their comms. Target leaders. Break their rhythm. The crag, bred for brute strength, floundered in the disorder. They swung at shadows, stumbled into traps, roared in rage as smaller, faster enemies darted out, struck, and vanished. On the cliffs above, Grand Strategist Varith watched through a command drone, mandibles rigid in disbelief. His formations had dissolved into madness, but the madness was working. Humans and aliens together, ragged squads clawing victory out of dust. This is not war, Varith muttered. This is butchery. A younger strategist whispered. It's survival. Varith turned sharply. It cannot last. They will burn themselves out. Yet the battle below told a different story. The crag advance slowed, then stalled, choked by relentless harassment. Hours dragged. Ammunition dwindled. Every soldier was fighting at the edge of exhaustion. Still, they refused to break. Mercer gathered his squad behind a collapsed transport. We've bled them, but not enough. They'll regroup. Next wave will crush us unless we finish this now. How? Hayes asked, coughing through smoke. Mercer pointed toward the crag command beast, a towering juggernaut bristling with signal spires, directing the horde with guttural commands. Cut off the head. The plan was suicide, and everyone knew it. Not one man hesitated. They moved through shattered ruins, slipping past patrols, climbing wreckage under cover of fire from allies. The crag command beast loomed ahead, massive and armored, surrounded by guards. Mercer raised his rifle, whispered. Hit them hard. Hit them fast. Grenades arced in. Fire swallowed the guard line. Humans rushed through the gap, rifles blazing. The beast turned, roaring, swatting two men aside with bone-crushing force. Hayes dove low, slicing wires from its comm harness. Sparks burst. The horde around them staggered, movements faltering without orders. Mercer climbed the beast's back, knife in hand. It bucked and thrashed, but he drove the blade deep into the base of its skull. The juggernaut collapsed, shaking the ground. For a heartbeat, silence hung. Then the crag line cracked. Leaderless, disoriented, they began to fall back. Cheers erupted across human and alien comms alike. The impossible had happened, the line held. Varith arrived on the battlefield hours later. He stepped through smoke and ruin, surrounded by aides, his polished armor untouched by the fight. Mercer stood among the wreckage, his soldiers slumped but alive, bloodied survivors who had defied annihilation. The strategist stopped before him. For the first time, arrogance wavered in his voice. "You turned the tide." Mercer's expression was grim. "No. My soldiers did. We turned your battlefield into hell and forced them to choke on it." Varith's mandibles clicked in frustration. "This chaos cannot be strategy." Mercer stepped closer, eyes hard. "Call it chaos, call it savagery. Doesn't matter. What matters is we lived. Your fleets didn't save this world. We did." Varith searched for words but found none. He turned away, silent. That night, humans and alien survivors shared the same fires. Exhausted soldiers, species who had never spoken to each other before, traded food, water, and silence born of shared blood. For the first time, aliens looked at the humans not as fodder, but as equals. Hayes sat beside Mercer, face pale with fatigue. "Think they'll remember this?" Mercer stared into the flames. "They'll have to. We just changed their war." The official reports would later dress the battle in rhetoric, empire resilience, strategic brilliance, but the soldiers who were there told a different story. They whispered of men and women who fought like demons, who turned certain defeat into survival, who refused to die even when the galaxy expected them to. And when the whispers reached the Senate, the phrase returned again and again. Humans don't fight like soldiers. They fight like survivors. At dawn, Mercer stood on the ridge above the valley. Smoke drifted over the battlefield, carrying the stench of blood and burned steel. He thought of the helmet he had placed before the Senate, of the soldier who had died holding a trench centuries ago. History had repeated itself, only this time the galaxy had witnessed it. Mercer whispered, as much to himself as to the rising sun. "You wanted soldiers. What you got were survivors."